Hi, and welcome to another Athletic NFL live Twitter, Zoom, whatever kind of chat this is here. We are heading into championship game week. I am Lindsay Jones. I'm one of our national NFL reporters here at The Athletic, and I am joined by four of our beat writers who cover the teams that are going to be playing this weekend. We've got Matt Schneidman checking in from Green Bay. We've got Greg Allman from Tampa Bay. We got the Bays. Wasn't this like a Chris Berman deal back in the day with the Bay of Pigs or something like that? We've got Nate Taylor in Kansas City, and we've got Matt Fairburn in Buffalo. So, obviously I think there's a ton of really interesting storylines this weekend. None bigger and more exciting, I think, than the quarterbacks that are playing in this game. In one game, we've got two of the older quarterbacks, not the complete old man bowl that we had last weekend with Tampa Bay versus New Orleans, but two of the older guys with Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, obviously. And then in the AFC, we've got, two really young guys where you get to look a lot at the 2017 draft class, the 2018 draft class with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So I think we're going to start with the quarterbacks, but I want to go to you first, Nate, in Kansas City, because the big story of the week is what is up with Patrick Mahomes and what are his chances to play this weekend. So could you just take us in, first of all, what's the latest in the news of Patrick Mahomes and where does he stand in the concussion protocol?
Yeah, it's been quite a buzz here in Kansas City. Obviously, a lot of people were gasping in the third quarter of the Chiefs' win over the Browns last week. Patrick Mahomes is in the concussion protocol still as of right now. I am told that he's in stage 4. Stage 5 is obviously being cleared out of the protocol by both the team medical staff and an independent neurologist. But hey, Patrick Mahomes practiced today. He had on a helmet. He threw a football, as I tweeted earlier today. Patrick Mahomes looks just like he normally does. The Chiefs are very optimistic that he will be cleared ahead of game time, that he will play in the AFC Championship game. Andy Reid today said he took the majority of snaps. You were right there with me, Lindsay. That means Patrick Mahomes took 99 out of 100 snaps. I'm sure of it. So, look, I think for Mahomes, there's still the issue with the toe. He moved around pretty well today at practice from my perspective. So we're going to see I think a matchup that the NFL wants to promote, which is Patrick Mahomes against Josh Allen. But for right now, Patrick Mahomes is trending to where maybe he's cleared tomorrow or Saturday ahead of Sunday's game.
So maybe if we're talking kind of like legacies and like the big picture of what getting to the Super Bowl means for all four of the quarterbacks in this game, Patrick Mahomes already has a league MVP. He's got a Super Bowl MVP. He just turned 25 years old. So what would it mean for Patrick Mahomes and kind of who he is, his status in the NFL, if he were to be able to get the Chiefs back to the Super Bowl for a second straight year?
He's also been on the cover of Madden. He's also thrown for 50 touchdowns in his first season as a true starter. This would just kind of be another sort of step in this remarkable career that Patrick Mahomes has. And you can add sort of this element where if he does come back from a concussion a week prior and leads the team to the Super Bowl with another brilliant performance, it would put him on a track to be the fastest quarterback to get to Hall of Fame status before the end of his 4th season, right? I mean, you can look at Tom Brady. You can look at, Joe Montana's career in the 80s and how it began. And Patrick Mahomes is just going at a rate that is warp speed compared to any quarterback in NFL history. So if the Chiefs were to win Sunday, if Mahomes is to play well, it pretty much signifies that not only was the Chiefs right to make that, historic trade in 2017 to go get him and trade with the Buffalo Bills, most notably from 27 to 10, but it just means that Mahomes is really the face of the league moving forward. And the idea that, hey, maybe he can be the next Tom Brady or perhaps even better, where you're going to see him in Super Bowls consecutive years or every other year. As long as he stays healthy and playing the next, under the Andy Reid scheme that he obviously has been just so dominant in when everything's going right for the Chiefs.
So we just had a comment in the chat from, I think, a Bills fan, judging by the hat that dog was wearing. Rich B wants to know if we're all under or downplaying the toe issue that Patrick Mahomes has going on. I know you asked Andy Reid about this earlier this week. What's Patrick Mahomes' toe status right now? And do you think he's going to be able to kind of get out on the run and throw on the run like he likes to do?
It's a really good question. And you and I have both talked about this, Lindsay, where we're going to watch this on the first drive, right? If Mahomes is cleared, if he starts the way we sort of expect him to, How often can he scramble? Now, he moved today. There's video of him that you can find on Twitter of him running, going through about, 60% of what he would need to be if he was scrambling out of the pocket. My question is, and we're not going to see this up until game time, honestly, is if he's starting, can he move in a manner that he can make these sudden cuts? People need to remember that Patrick Mahomes is, in my opinion, the best play of Patrick Mahomes' career is the run against the Tennessee Titans, right? It was so tremendous. He used the sideline to his benefit, even though that was technically an extra defender. He got past Rashad Evans, one of the best linebackers in the league. So, look, if you want Patrick Mahomes to be as dynamic as he has been in the past, can he cut on that leg? Can the toe stand up in the fourth quarter of a close game if he needs to scramble for a first down to either keep possession or to obviously make a comeback attempt for the Kansas City Chiefs? It'll be interesting to see that Andy Reid believes he's fine. I should mention that. Andy Reid believes that he's going to be totally fine.
Andy Reid, also not a doctor. I'll just point that out.
Yes, we don't believe we see if that'll actually hold up. But I do want fans to think about how he plays in the first half versus how he plays in the fourth quarter when you know the game's on the line and the defense is kind of adjusted to what he's capable of that day and whether or not he can make an extra play or two with his legs.
All right, so let's go to the other quarterback in this AFC Championship game. So let's bring in Matthew Fairburn in Buffalo. I don't know if any of us would have predicted before the season that Josh Allen would be, one, an MVP candidate, and two, in the AFC Championship game, but here we are. So Matthew, take us inside what you've seen out of Josh Allen so far in this postseason, and maybe what's at stake for him if he's able to lead the Bills to their first Super Bowl since the mid-90s.
Yeah, it feels like everything is at stake. I feel like he could run for mayor here and win pretty easily. I think he'd, kind of run the town if he wins a Super Bowl. People will probably be ready to build a statue of this guy. Through the first 2 weeks of the postseason, he's been, I would say, a little bit up and down. I think he is the reason they won that game against the Colts in the wild card round. He essentially carried them to a win when they weren't playing particularly well on the defensive side of the ball late in that game. Against the Ravens, they got to him a bit, but he avoided, he's been avoiding the crucial mistake that seems to have plagued him early in his career prior to this year. He seems to have, gotten rid of that. He fumbled, in each of these games, but didn't lose the fumbles and didn't put the ball in harm's way in the air. So, yeah, he's been steady for them. I thought, making plays out of structure against the Colts was, a big factor in why they, were able to advance. And against the Ravens, you're kind of just trying to keep your head above water when they're, sending that pass rush, and they have great cover corners. So he led, a drive that was just enough, and the defense made some plays. So he's this week, very confident quietly, as he is. He's not, a guy that's going to come out and say a lot, but they feel like they internalized a lot from that first game against the Chiefs. Probably Josh Allen's worst game of the season. He was fighting through a shoulder injury at the time, and they think that they're a much better team now. And the numbers back that up. From week 7 to week 17, the Bills are almost a touchdown per game better than the Chiefs in point differential. So they have played a lot better since losing to the Chiefs in that game. Josh Allen's played a lot better. And yeah, it's all on the line right now. People love that guy in this town, and they're gonna probably love him even more if he gets him to the Super Bowl. I mean, he can do no wrong in Bills fans' eyes right now.
Just crazy, because it wasn't that long ago that Bills fans really wanted Josh Rosen, right?
They did. There's a chunk of them out there that probably won't admit it, but there was a 50-50 of, oh man, what have they done? There were some people, people in Buffalo are very quick to take the side of, they've got a little bit of an inferiority complex going. And so as soon as everybody else started ganging up on Josh Allen, they dug their heels in and they were like, no, this is our guy and we're going to defend him. And it's paid off, the patience and everything that the Bills have done around Josh Allen has worked out. But yeah, heading into that 2018 draft, it was far from a consensus that they should go out and get this guy from Wyoming who hadn't completed 60% of his passes. He was not a sure thing, and certainly not the consensus pick from Bills fans.
I'll say I live in Denver, and there's a lot of people in my city right now who are wishing that the Broncos had taken Josh Allen. But I don't think a single one of them was asking for Josh Allen back before that draft. So I think there may be some contract stuff interesting, for him now. He's entering kind of that time where he could start negotiating on a new deal. I think it would probably be wise for him to wait and not rush to do that, especially in a year where the cap is going to fall, but wait to let guys like, Dak Prescott get their deals. But, he's playing himself now into that conversation of a guy who's going to get a really big long-term deal from the Bills. I don't think it's going to be 10 years, $500 million like Patrick Mahomes got, but he's earning himself a lot of money and really moving himself into that franchise quarterback conversation. So that'll be something really interesting to watch now in coming years.
Yeah, I think he's not in the 10-year, $500 million, but he might be 10 years, $450 million. He might be in that, ballpark right now. And I think that's a really interesting storyline to follow throughout this offseason, because the Bills probably in their long-term plan would like to get it done sooner, like you said, before the market continues to go up and those $500 million contracts are a little more the norm. But I think Josh Allen might want to get it done. Not to say that, his market's going to go down next year, but he likes it here. He said this week that it feels like home, and, the environment in the building, the environment in the town is something that he really likes. And I think unless it's a lot of lip service, he's a guy that cares about having the right pieces around him and having his guys taken care of. And not to say a 10-year, $450 million contract is team friendly, but if he can help get it done sooner and, have some flexibility like, kind of Patrick Mahomes has in his contract, and maybe it helps the team sustain this. And $450 million goes a long way in Buffalo, I think. I don't know. I've never had that.
That's not what your contract at the Athletic looks like.
I've never had that much myself, but I think that goes a little bit farther in Buffalo than it does in some other markets.
I think it goes pretty far in Kansas City too. My sister-in-law was just telling me all about Patrick's house and how it's he's doing well for himself in Kansas City as well. So now let's flip over to guys who have gotten paid a lot of money over the course of their careers. Let's get to the old guys in the NFC Championship game. So let's go first to Tampa Bay with Tom Brady getting back to his 14th conference championship game. Of course, this is his first time playing an NFC Championship game. I think this was the reason that the Bucs signed him, was to get to this point. But so Greg, take us into what's been going on with Brady lately and how he's been acting, what he's been saying heading into this conference championship game, and maybe what you could expect from him this week.
Yeah, but Brady's playing at a very high level. It's like they've been on the road for 3 games in a row in the playoffs now, which is not what he's used to at all. But he's played his best football of this season on the road. The last time he threw an interception on the road was week 1 in New Orleans, which is crazy. It's like you think you're jinxing him to point that out. But in this, they've won their last 7 on the road, which is a Bucs record. And he's had 19 touchdowns in those games against no interceptions. So he's gotten it done. Being on the road obviously is a little different this year because you're not dealing with crowds. Going to face Lambeau Field with 8,000 fans is much different than doing it with a packed house. And the cold, which is the other thing that's a big function this week of being in Green Bay, Wisconsin, is something that Tom Brady's very much at home with. So, he seems relaxed. He seems focused. We talked to him Wednesday. We'll get him again tomorrow. But no, this is what he's done. He's been to more conference championship games than anybody. He's won more conference championship games than anybody. So he's very much in his element, even with a new team and dealing with everything else around him being new.
So legacy-wise, what would it mean for Tom Brady to get back to another Super Bowl and to do it without the Patriots and Bill Belichick?
Yeah, it's like there's not much difference between 9 Super Bowls and 10 Super Bowls. But I think when he set out on this second chapter in Tampa was to try and accomplish something distinct and separate from Bill Belichick. So to do that with a franchise that hasn't been to the playoffs in 13 years, hasn't won a playoff game in 17 years, and now he's won 2 in 2 weeks, it would be significant. And obviously he's been a big part of that. I think it helps him in terms of accomplishing that the Patriots have been home. They didn't make the playoffs. And had it been like a one and done for him, it might have been easy to just say there's not much of a difference. But for them to have a sustained playoff run like this, to beat a good playoff team in the Saints too, I think it kind of validates the success they had to be an 11-win team. That's not a lot by Tom Brady standards, but that's a lot by Buccaneer standards.
And we'll cross this bridge if we get to it, but I also can't imagine how cool it would be to play a home Super Bowl. It's never happened in NFL history. This is the second time in the last, I guess the other time was the 2017 season when the Vikings made it to the NFC Championship game, lost to the Eagles, that they were one game away from playing potentially a home Super Bowl. So if they win, we'll come back and we'll get into all of those Tampa Bay storylines next week. So now let's go to Green Bay. Let's bring in Matt Schneidman and his excellent velour tracksuit, not the gold one, which you wore yesterday, which made Aaron Rodgers call you Mr. Bumblebee, which is now sticking amongst our NFL staff. I hope you're okay with that. We're going to use that. We'll use that forever. But look, so Aaron Rodgers, presumptive league MVP. I think at this point, all of the other awards that have come out, we would be very surprised if Aaron Rodgers isn't the MVP. So now let's talk about kind of what it would mean to him to get back to another Super Bowl and how he's kind of feeling this week. So take us inside of his process right now.
He knows how much a second Super Bowl ring means to legacy talk. And listen, he'll go down as one of the most talented players to ever play this game. But he understands more than anyone that only means so much if he only has one Super Bowl to his name. He hasn't been to the Super Bowl in a decade. You know, they've lost 3 NFC Championship games since they won the Super Bowl 10 years ago. They lost in Seattle in 2014, in Atlanta in 2016, and then in Santa Clara against the 49ers last year. Something that I found really interesting about Aaron Rodgers this year, and talking to the guys who have covered him his whole career, this is the best mood he's been in all year. He's talked so much this season about being in a better headspace, being happy, not taking anything for granted, just being thankful for where he's at in his career and enjoying the ride. And now I don't know if it has anything to do with the Packers drafting Jordan Love and it really kind of setting in with him that his Packers career could be coming to an end here shortly, but he's really riding the wave, as cliche as that sounds, and playing really good football too. I don't know if you want to call it a resurgent season or, the rebirth of Aaron Rodgers, because he never really went away, because of his performance. It was more so because of injuries, but he's been playing better football, arguably, than anyone else in the world this season. And one championship game, conference championship game, I should say, at home is something he's never had before. He was on the sideline for the one in 2007 here in Green Bay when the Packers lost to the Giants, but he didn't play in it because Brett Favre was still the quarterback. But something he's stressed a lot has been finally getting one of these at home for the first time in his 16-year career, and he's really looking forward to it.
Well, and the one blemish on his MVP season was that game week 6 in Tampa. What happened in that game, and why maybe are you confident, or are you confident that he won't have that sort of performance again in a rematch against the Bucs?
Yeah, it started with the offensive line resembling a nice piece of Swiss cheese up front. I mean, I think PFF had Rodgers down for being pressured 21 times that game. The second most amount of pressures he sustained this season was 12. So it was by far the most duress he's been under. He threw interceptions on back-to-back drives. Keep in mind, Aaron Rodgers only threw 5 interceptions this season. 40% of those came on back-to-back drives in the second quarter against the Buccaneers, one of them being his third career pick 6. And then the second interception he threw was returned to the 2-yard line. So he basically just gifted the Buccaneers 14 points. Packers got out to a 10-0 lead in that game and then gave up 28 points in the second quarter. He's not going to throw 2 interceptions again, I don't think, especially on back-to-back drives. But the reason I think the game should be closer than that, maybe the Buccaneers will still win, I don't know. But the Packers offensive line has played lights out since then. They finished first in the NFL in ESPN's pass block win rate stat and run block win rate stat. Even without David Bakhtiari, their first team All-Pro left tackle who tore his ACL a couple weeks ago in week 17, practice leading up to week 17, I should say. They have Billy Turner from your neck of the woods starting at left tackle. And really the only household names, I wouldn't even call them household names on the offensive line, are Elton Jenkins, the 25-year-old Pro Bowl starter at left guard, and Corey Linsley, who's a first-team All-Pro center this year. So the offensive line is a lot more confident that they can withstand that Bucs pass rush, that Todd Bowles pass rush that's so dangerous and will cause them so much trouble in week 6. And I just think that intangible aspect of the stakes being higher, the game being played at Lambeau with a spot in the Super Bowl on the line, the Packers aren't going to lose by 28 again. They might lose, but not by 28, I don't think.
Well, before we go back to the AFC game, I want to bring Greg Allman back in to ask kind of a similar question, because the Bucs have gone through a lot of changes as well since week 6. So how are they a different team now? And how do you expect maybe their game plan, either offensively or defensively, to change in this rematch?
Yeah, I think they're a lot sharper offensively. I mean, I think they were still kind of finding themselves in week 6. They scored 38 in that game, but there was the defensive touchdown. They had a 3-yard touchdown drive. I think, didn't have Antonio Brown at that point, so that adds something to the pass game. I think Leonard Fournette missed that game with injury, so that adds a little bit from the run game as well. So just healthier, I would say, overall. There's a chance they could get Vita Vea back. He's practicing, their big D tackle. They did not have him. They had just lost him for the season a week earlier in week 6 in that Packers game. So I don't know that Vea is going to play his normal playing time just because he hasn't played in 15 weeks. But to get him back would be another key part of that run defense to help try and stop that Green Bay run game.
What is Antonio Brown's status? I know he was limited last week with a knee injury.
Yeah, it's very day to day. He did not practice yesterday. He did not practice today. Bruce Arians made a point to say that he does not really feel like Antonio Brown has to practice this week to play on Sunday just because he's old enough and knows the offense and everything. But if he didn't practice again on Friday, I think it'd be telling. The Bucs do have good receiver depth. If they can't get Antonio Brown to go, they've got Scotty Miller. They have a rookie named Tyler Johnson who had a big catch on Sunday. But in the playoffs, if you can have Antonio Brown out there, I think you want him out there. He's got 5 career 100-yard games in the playoffs. So it definitely would add something, allow them to maybe test Green Bay's nickel corner a little bit more if he's there and healthy and able to play.
It is really interesting that both of these games are rematches from week 6. I don't know what the NFL schedule makers were doing or how they managed to make this happen, but the AFC game also a rematch of week 6. So let's bring back in Matthew and Nate. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of how these two teams are different, these AFC teams, because Matthew, you already mentioned that that Josh Allen was dealing with a shoulder last time. It was probably his worst game of the season. So how do you think the Bills are maybe outside of Allen are maybe better prepared to handle the Chiefs in a way that they weren't in week 6?
Yeah, they're a lot better on defense than they were at that point. They were struggling through the first month and a half of the season as a defensive unit. Part of it was injury. When you're trying to cover Travis Kelce and you don't have Matt Milano, who is the guy that they use to cover tight ends, that can be a problem. Tremaine Edmonds was less than 100% with a shoulder injury that he dealt with earlier in the season. So there were some injury factors. It was also a weird game plan from Buffalo that week. I don't know, at least in my opinion. I'm not necessarily a game plan expert, but they let up over 200 yards on the ground, and afterwards the explanation was like, well, we were taking away the deep pass. We were taking away the big play, and I think there's a happy medium there. Taking away the big play and letting up 200 yards on the ground doesn't do you a ton of good. Patrick Mahomes still went 21 for 28 in that game. Travis Kelce had 2 touchdowns. They did take away Tyreek Hill, which I think is something to watch this weekend. He only had 3 catches for 20 yards in that game. Like I said, Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes for 160 yards. Travis Kelce gets 2 touchdowns. You kind of have to pick your poison with this Chiefs offense, but they could take away one of them, Hill or Kelce. That helps, slow that Chiefs offense down, which they did. The problem was Steve Spagnuolo really confused Josh Allen. They dropped a lot of guys in coverage. They basically made them nickel and dime down the field and waited for Josh Allen to make a mistake, and he did. So it made it hard for the Bills to sustain anything consistently on offense. But like I said, almost from that point forward, outside of a Hail Mary against the Cardinals, they won every game. And like I mentioned, they were a touchdown per game better in point differential than the Chiefs were the rest of the season. So they've certainly changed. They got a lot better on offense, and they're playing a lot better on defense. They completely shut down the Ravens, probably their most complete defensive game of the season last week. So it's not the same Bills team, but some of the same dynamics in what we've all heard coaches say a million times is a matchup league. Some of those same dynamics are still at play here. Some of the same questions, same problems still present themselves with this Chiefs team, because while they didn't have the same explosion that the Bills had from week 7 on, they're not exactly, they're the defending Super Bowl champs. They can flip a switch in a hurry, and I think the Bills are mindful of that.
So Nate, how have the Chiefs changed since week 6 when they last played Buffalo? And do you think their game plans will be any different on offense or defense?
I actually think Matt brought up a really great point from the Bill side, and it's kind of the reverse in Kansas City where, Sammy Watkins is dealing with a calf injury. He did not play in the divisional round against the Cleveland Browns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, although he was special, had his best game of his rookie season against the Bills. He did not play in the playoffs because of an ankle and hip injury. Obviously, Mahomes is dealing with the concussion protocol and the toe. So the Chiefs are not as healthy as they were back in week 6, and their offensive line is still sort of this question mark, sort of this position group that makes a lot of Chiefs fans a little weary about what could come because of Mahomes' sort of injury last week. So I feel like the Chiefs team as a whole is different a little bit just because they've played, obviously, in the Super Bowl last year. Some of the attrition is starting to occur on this team, and they're trying to find the best way to get to the finish line, which is obviously repeating as champions. So they're going to have to count on some guys who are lesser known, maybe on the roster and, nationally, to have some success, whether that's Darrell Williams, who was the starting running back last week, whether that's L'Jarius Sneed, who did not play in the first matchup, but has been an impressive rookie corner since he's come back from the collarbone injury that he had back in week 3. And in terms of the schematics and the matchups that sort of Matt mentioned, the Bills should be better prepared to face Travis Kelce this time. The problem with that is, and what has really confused and really made nightmares for defensive coordinators, is the moment you start to shift to Travis Kelce is when Tyreek Hill can beat you deep, or what the Chiefs did last week, which I found to be wildly entertaining, but we don't talk about it just because of Mahomes' injury. They put Tyreek Hill from the outside. They brought him back to the backfield. He was with Patrick Mahomes because they wanted that speed element just to account for how the Browns linebackers were going to play. So that's something that the Bills are going to have to look at on tape. And they really never gave, Tyreek Hill the ball, even though he was in that sort of running back, scat back position. Obviously, Mecole Hardman has speed. He can take the top off if you are shading too much into, Tyreek Hill's vantage point. But I think the difference that the Chiefs showed in the first matchup is they're okay with understanding what the terms of the agreement are, the rules of the engagement, and then still winning, right? So whether or not you want to choose to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who may not be 100%, if you want to choose him to be the team that, the guy that beats you on offense, then that's okay. But I still think there's going to be moments for Patrick Mahomes to find Travis Kelce. That's the guy he relies on most, particularly on third down. Even if it is 3rd and 10, I still look more at what Travis Kelce's doing on the field than even Tyreek Hill. And then defensively, what Steve Spagnuolo, I think, has found real success, Lindsay, is second-half adjustments and understanding what the quarterback is capable of doing in the first couple of drives given the Chiefs personnel. So Tyrann Mathieu is going to play with a lot of freedom in the back end. He's going to read a lot of Josh Allen's eyes and understand where the football may go. And then I really think this game comes down to Cole Beasley, right? Everybody understands that Stephon Diggs is going to get the majority of the attention from the Chiefs secondary. That is the best position group in the Chiefs defense. It's not Chris Jones. It's not Frank Clark. It's actually the secondary, in my opinion, as to why the Chiefs defense are reliable, particularly once the team gets a lead. They are not willing to give up big plays just because the secondary can cover, whether that be in man or zone. So if Cole Beasley can work in the middle of the field, if he can extend drives, if he can be somewhere in the red zone where the attention is sort of given elsewhere, then Josh Allen's going to have a number of opportunities to sort of move the football and sort of prove himself in a real championship manner. I am most intrigued beyond Mahomes in the fourth quarter of this game. If it is tight, how does Josh Allen perform? Just because the Chiefs defense, although they are they're not in the spotlight as much, the Chiefs defense over the last 2 years has played its best football in the fourth quarter because they generally get an idea of what the opposing offense is doing, and they start to make you play uncomfortably left-handed or what you're not used to. So I'm looking at Cole Beasley, who's obviously been coming off an injury and playing really well, and whether or not Bashaud Breeland, Travarius Ward, and L'Jarius Sneed can do enough to make sure Stephon Diggs doesn't have 250 yards or 150 yards or 2 touchdowns that makes this game more of a shootout.
Something to watch. Cole Beasley did not practice today. He was removed from the injury report at the beginning of the week. On Wednesday, he wasn't on there at all, which suggested the knee injury was behind him. Today, nope, limited in practice and with that knee injury again. So he was pretty hobbled by it in the wild card round. He did not catch a pass in the divisional round because of Marlon Humphrey. looked like it was behind him. It popped up again today. So we'll see what happens there. Tomorrow will be very telling if that was just something small that popped up or if it was, a re-aggravation of what he had before.
Well, Matt, you've got some fans in the chat. I think
what can I say?
Maybe like your beard. I don't know, but you got some fans here. So I want to get into some more matchups. So now let's switch back over to the NFC game. Let's go first back to Green Bay. Schneidman, we've talked a lot about Aaron Rodgers, but the Packers really kind of won their game last week against the Rams offensively because of a really impressive performance from their running backs, from Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams. What's AJ Dillon's status going to be, and how do you think they potentially can match up against some really good inside linebackers with the Bucs?
Yeah, AJ Dillon should be good to go. I didn't know his quads could possibly get injured because they're like tree trunks, but he did leave Saturday's game early against the Rams with a quad injury, but he's practiced both days this week so far and should be good to go. So it's kind of evolved over the season from, giving Aaron Jones the majority of the carries. He still gets the majority of the carries, but what they're able to do with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and AJ Dillon and really keep defenses off balance because the three of them have different running styles. They're all capable of catching balls out of the backfield and pass blocking, quite frankly, too. So it really kept the Rams off balance, at least at the start of the game. And that's going to be priority number one, because in week 6, they really didn't get much going on the ground. Yeah, they ran for 94 yards, but they didn't really meet. There were, chunk yards and garbage yards that didn't really mean much. Aaron Jones ran 10 times for 15 yards in that game. His worst performance of the season in that regard, too. It's going to be really important, especially against Devin White and Levante David, who I think are the two best, not two best overall, but best inside linebacking duo in the NFL. They can rush the passer. They can stuff the run. They can drop back in coverage. And something they did really well in week 6 was sniff out any kind of horizontal action the Packers ran on offense, whether it was screen passes or tosses or outside zone runs, anything in that regard. Those two, not young, but fast linebackers sniffed it out and really stopped that. And the Packers have been so good on play action this year. In the regular season, Aaron Rodgers had 21 touchdown passes and no interceptions on play action. Another one to Alan Lazard on Saturday against the Rams, the 58-yard touchdown pass to really ice the game that was made possible because they had already established the run game and then some earlier in the game. So they really sold the run on that play. Against the Bucs, that's really the only hope they have to having an offensive performance anything better than what they turned forth in week 6. And the Buccaneers were better than any team this season at stuffing the run. And quite frankly, if the Packers, like I said, want any chance of getting back to the Super Bowl, they're going to need to run the ball effectively early on and change up who they run it with to kind of keep those two linebackers and the rest of the Buccaneers defense guessing.
All right, let's bring in Greg back in Tampa. And I've got, if you have anything you want to jump in with, Greg, about what Matt said about those inside linebackers, but I also want to know, how do you think the Bucs are going to try to cover Davante Adams?
Yeah, they'll be tough. I mean, because they've had number one receivers beat them up this year, especially early in games. As Nate can attest, Tyreek Hill went for 203 yards in the first quarter against this defense. I think Carlton Davis will be the main guy on him. Did a good job with kind of injured Michael Thomas last week. I mean, that's dangerous. Like I said, they have struggled. Their pass defense has been the most inconsistent and vulnerable part of this team, even late in the year. So I would tell you that's where they're probably most at risk to get beat up on Sunday is Davante Adams having a big game like that. I think everything that Matt said about the linebackers is true. They were without Devin White for 2 weeks when he was on the COVID list, and it really wasn't the same defense. Devin came back against the Saints and was all over the place. 11 tackles, had a fumble recovery, had an interception. That speed in the middle of the field is probably one of their strengths defensively. It definitely clogs up the run and helps what is the number one run defense in the NFL. But like I said, this Green Bay run game, especially the way they can change backs and kind of change things up, is a real challenge for them. They probably did better against Breeze and a pass defense this past week than they did against Kamara and the run game. So it's a challenge. Again, if they get Vita Vea back, that helps when he's in the game. But this will be a big part is how those linebackers line up with those running backs.
All right, let's bring everybody back in here. All right, we get the whole grid. We got the whole team here now. So we've got a few more minutes left before we wrap this up. I know we're getting into the evening time on the East Coast here. So I wanted to kind of go around and get everybody's kind of parting thoughts about this game, and then also a Super Bowl matchup prediction. So let's go first, Matt Fairburn. What's your parting thought about what you think is going to happen? And then who do you think is going to be the ultimate Super Bowl matchup here?
Well, I think the Bills are going to beat the Chiefs. I have had a hard time picking against this Bills team for most of the year. They've really made me pay for that. And so I stopped doing it in the playoffs. And, it's working out pretty good for me so far. So I'm sticking with it. I think the way Josh Allen is playing is, a lot of this, talk, same as last week, everybody was talking about Lamar Jackson, how the Bills would slow him down. And this week they're doing it with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. And that's obviously a big part of what's going to happen, but it all comes down to 17, like how he handles that Chiefs defense will be the story of this game, because this team lives and dies with their quarterback, as most of these, as all these teams left really do. And, he's been able to pull them out of some really bad situations within games. So, yeah, I think he's going to win this game. And then I at the beginning of the playoffs, I had Bills Bucks. I don't know. Maybe it's just the sports writer in me going for, the really juicy storyline of the Bills needing to get past Tom Brady to get their first Super Bowl. But that to me would be the ultimate, the final boss in the video game, I guess, that the Bills need to defeat to really erase all their demons. So we'll see what happens, but that's my pick for Sunday.
Well, and then if that ends up being the matchup, and there'll be, I don't know, probably max 20,000 fans. Greg, you might actually have some insight too about what you're hearing about the stadium capacity in Tampa for that game. I don't think it'll be more than 20,000. Wonder if any of those Bills fans are able to sneak in some of the paraphernalia that they would bring to Patriots games back in the day. We'll see. That could be a storyline the NFL would potentially like to avoid. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read up on Tim Graham wrote the definitive story about the Bills fans against Tom Brady, the way they would handle those games in Buffalo. So now let's go to Schneidman. Give me your parting thought on this game. What are you maybe your final takeaway, and then your Super Bowl matchup?
Yeah, what I'm most interested to see is who throws the first punch, because I remember sitting in Santa Clara last year for the NFC Championship game, and the Packers forced a 3-and-out on the 49ers, but then I believe the 49ers were up 27-0 at halftime, and the Packers really had no shot. If this is a game that the Packers can stay in, unlike Week 6 in Tampa, I think they have a good shot to win, because, like I said earlier, there's the intangible aspect of Aaron Rodgers, and listen, Tom Brady can do this too, but Aaron Rodgers refusing to let them fall short of a Super Bowl in what has seemed like a storybook season for him and the Packers. Packer fans are going to be really angry at me for this, because I picked the Rams to beat the Packers last week, and they have been hounding me all week to pick against the Packers again because it worked last week, but I can't do it. I'm going to pick the Packers 31-24. I think it's going to be a close game. I just think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a little bit more careful with the ball. I think they get the running game going a little bit more, and that opens up some play action, and the offensive line holds up a little bit more. So, and I think I like the Bills to win. I'm going to go the Bills too. I went to college at Syracuse, so I have a bunch of friends from up in the area. I worked in Buffalo for a little bit after college, so that area has a soft spot for me. I'm going to go Packers, Bills in the Super Bowl.
All right. All right, Greg. You're the hometown Super Bowl reporter in Tampa Bay. What's your X factor this weekend for this NFC Championship game? And who do you think you'll be watching and welcoming to your city in 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's a tough game to call. A lot closer than Week 6. I'll start there. And I think, I feel like more than anything else, this will be a close game. This will be a fourth quarter game. Lead changes in the fourth quarter. I'm glad I won't be a newspaper writer on deadline. But I do think it's a game that the Bucs can pull out. It feels like about a 35-31 game right now. But like I said, it's tight enough where it's so hard to think about either quarterback making a mistake in the fourth quarter, which is what this will come down to. On the AFC side, I think Buffalo is definitely the sentimental pick to think of them whether it's Brady or not, if they've lost a Super Bowl in Tampa before, to come back and get a chance to win a Super Bowl, that would be the sentimental pick. I think Kansas City wins. I think as long as Mahomes is healthy and good to go, I think it's just too much. So I guess that would be a Bucs-Chiefs Super Bowl here in Tampa is what I'm seeing.
So one last question about the NFC Championship game before we do this. Matt, what is the weather forecast? And do you think it is going to be a factor this weekend?
I don't think too much. Last I checked, it's supposed to be mid to high 20s, which is scorching hot in Green Bay with about a 47 to 50% chance of snow. You know, like Greg said earlier, Tom Brady knows what these conditions are about. But if you look at what the Packers did to the Titans a couple weeks ago when they came in here as, I guess, a warm weather team, they were scoring over 31 points a game entering that game. And in snow all game, pretty much, they scored 14. And Devontae Adams said after that game, you know, the only thing that can get you ready for this is practicing in this cold and this weather every day. And if you don't, you come in and you don't play as fast. And that makes a true difference. And it's not a cliche, which I tend to agree with. You know, the Packers practice in this every day. But listen, there's a spot in the Super Bowl on the line. 27 degrees isn't going to be too much of a game changer for anyone on the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I've seen Brady win some AFC Championship games in some pretty gnarly conditions. So I think he at least will be fine. I don't know about some of the other guys who've maybe never played in really cold championship games. I mean, the Bucs have certainly never played in a championship game like this. So another place where weather could potentially be a factor. I mean, I've covered some really, really cold games in January at Arrowhead Stadium. Probably doesn't get enough respect for how awful the conditions can be there are the Chiefs. So Nate, what's your X factor for the AFC Championship game, your final thoughts, and your Super Bowl prediction?
Yeah, well, first, I just love these comments, and thank you to everybody who watches us, because shout out to the Mats over here getting the love. I see this as a true shootout, right? I want Chiefs-Bills to be back and forth, a nail biter, everybody on the edge of their seat. But I feel like this is 2018 in reverse. And I think I'm going to pick Chiefs 34, Bills 31, in large part because the Chiefs are the championship team. They have a Hall of Fame coach in Andy Reid. They have a Hall of Fame caliber, if not going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. And this will be a logical next step for the Bills, where I think that they are really competitive. They are obviously super talented. As Matt mentioned earlier, I mean, they don't lose games, and they have been performing at a high level. So for Josh Allen, this is one of the hurdles that you have to get through. Patrick Mahomes went through it in 2018. So I think it's going to be close. The weather is probably not going to be a factor, although it has been in previous Arrowhead games in January where it's gotten really icy, more or less than snow. And on the NFC side, I am going to be a little bit sentimental, where I learned about the Super Bowl from my father because he explained the idea of, hey, there was Green Bay and there was Kansas City and it was the AFL NFL Championship. There was no thing called the Super Bowl. So maybe 50 years after the original, maybe we get Packers Chiefs, maybe we get Rodgers Mahomes. State Farm, as they're listening to me right now, is nodding their head saying, yeah.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Please let this happen. Can we run about 20 commercials in this? So that's what I'm going with. I think the Tampa Bay story has been really fun as well. But I just think Aaron Rodgers is playing on a planet right now that is not Earth. And so we should see Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers if the NFL gods want that to happen. But I do think for the Bills and the Buccaneers, this has been a fabulous season, and it will propel them for 2021.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you that, I mean, I did some way too early predictions, I think, on Sunday night when I first wrote about these matchups. And those are the two teams that I picked to win. The thing about the Chiefs that I always come back to, or at least keep coming back to, is that they win close games. They don't lose close games. Nate, you might know the stat off the top of your head, but they either win by blowouts or they win close games. They don't, lose a 34-31 type of game. They don't lose a 17-13 kind of game. It's just been this kind of really remarkable thing about Patrick Mahomes' career. And also that he doesn't play bad games. Like, I don't think he's had an entire bad game in his career. He's had a bad quarter. I mean, he had a terrible quarter against Miami earlier this year. But he hasn't played a fully bad game. And if it comes down, if it's a close game, my money is going to be there with the Chiefs. So that's kind of where I'm leaning But I think any of the possible Super Bowl matchups are pretty great. And
Yeah.
we'll definitely be back with two of you to do some Super Bowl previews. I don't know which two it's going to be. We'll have to find out, but certainly two of you. And anybody have any like final thoughts? Anything you want to say to your many fans in the comments before we sign off?
I will say I got to get my jumpsuit game up, and the idea that, again, like if it is close in the fourth quarter, just statistically and historically, the Chiefs won 7 straight games by 1 score or less. That is an NFL record. But I just want to see you guys soon, and hopefully, we won't have any COVID related issues, affecting either one of these games or potentially in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to have an athletic reunion at some point. We'll all get our vaccinations someday, and we'll get to have a staff summit. We won't have to just keep meeting like this on Zoom. But I think we're really lucky. I think these are 2 excellent championship games. I'm not sure if we could have really asked for 2 better AFC and NFC matchups. It's really the ones that I think have the most intriguing storylines. So thank you guys for tuning in, and make sure you read all of our coverage at The Athletic. Follow all of these guys on Twitter. Make sure they're going to be writing a ton of stories all through the week, and we will see you guys next time.